you ready to explore exciting careers in neuroscience and neurotechnologies? Then join me, your podcast host, Dr. Milena Krastenskaya, or simply Dr. K, and my amazing guests on the Neurocareers Doing the Impossible podcast. Discover what it takes to turn the impossible into reality. Tune in now to a thrilling episode, number 82. Dear Neurocareers podcast listeners, get ready into an insightful journey into the world of drama, improvisation, and neuroscience with our distinguished guest, Dr. Sirke Seppänen. With over 2 decades of experience as a drama teacher and a PhD in the performing arts, Sirke is a true luminary in her field. Her passion for the performing arts is only matched by her dedication to exploring the intersection of improvisation and neuroscience. In her recent peer-reviewed paper, Improvisation in the Brain and Body, published in Drama Australia Journal, Sirke presents groundbreaking findings from 4 extensive studies. These findings not only enhance our understanding of applied improvisation, but also shed light on its profound impact on the brain and bodily processes. Join us as we delve into the fascinating world of applied improvisation, where theoretical constructs meet empirical research. Discover how improvisation training can mitigate social stress and boost interpersonal confidence, even for those who may be less self-assured. Sirke's work demonstrates that the emotions and experiences generated in improvisational context mirror real-world interactions, offering valuable insights for education and beyond. Don't miss this captivating episode of Neurocareers Doing the Impossible as we explore the remarkable connection between the arts, neuroscience, and education with Dr. Sirke Seppänen. Welcome, Sirke. It's a great pleasure to have you today on our podcast. And can you please briefly introduce yourself to our listeners and tell us where you're joining us from?
Well, thank you, Milena, for inviting me to this great podcast of yours. I am a drama teacher, former dancer, nowadays drama teacher, and also recently a PhD in educational sciences. I'm a Finnish scientist and a teacher, but now I am in Estonia, where we have our kind of a second home.
Yeah, thank you so much for this introduction. Estonia is one of three Baltic countries. Yes, Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia. So I'm from Lithuania. I very often would go through Estonia when I was doing my PhD in Helsinki, because I was going through Estonia, Latvia to get to Lithuania. So it's good memories. You brought very nice memories. So you have very interesting background. So it looks like you always were interested in performing arts. You were a dancer, then you became drama teacher. Can you maybe share the history of what attracted you in performing arts? Why did you decide to dance, build your career around that, and then shifted into drama?
Okay, let me see if I can remember. Because, let me start by going back to my first academic studies in Helsinki University. I was studying comparative religions and international politics. Well, I had this hobby of dancing. I had been dancing already since my teens, but during the university studies, I started dancing Middle Eastern dances. Of course, they were close to my area of research and so. And I completely fell in love with Middle Eastern dance. And then after I graduated, I started to dance professionally. And that's how I earned my living. It was a really big boom in Finland during 90s. We called it Oriental dance. I could work as much as I could. And so it turned out that I danced through the next 30 years. That was my first career. During these years and years of dance, I started to question some things. And of course, I struggled with this, is it stage fright, or performance anxiety? Maybe you have heard of it or experienced it, but I think everyone knows something about it. So, of course, performing artists are faced with that fact quite often. And so I wanted to find some relief to that, and also for my self-expression. How could I express myself better? So on. So I started to take acting classes and some courses, and of course I organized also these courses because during that time I already had my own dance school, and I could do anything I wanted to. If I wanted to try yoga, so I organized yoga classes, and if I wanted to try acting courses or workshops, so I organized those. And so I found that really interesting, and I found that I was leaning towards that, towards the world of theatre more and more, and I was hungry to get more experiences and information. So I started studying drama education. It took me 3 to 4 years to accomplish those studies, drama education studies. And there I met this or improvisation for the first time. I felt so home in it, and it had so many answers to myself and to my questions and stage fright. So that was my focus at that time. And then, however, after I graduated from drama education, I found that I needed to study more because in Finland, if you want to teach in this official school system, so you need to have a teacher's pedagogical qualification. So again, took 2 to 3 years to have this pedagogical qualification, but after that, I was a qualified drama teacher. And I thought that, well, now I will not have to study anything ever anymore. And so, again, I found that I'm missing some information, and I don't understand everything in this context. And there were many reasons for starting PhD studies, but this is kind of a flashbulb memory. I had finished a improv workshop, and after this workshop, a psychology student came to me after the course, and she asked me what's the theory behind improvisation? Like everything seems so working and good and inspiring, but what's the theory? And then I couldn't answer that question, so I got a little bit irritated to myself that why can't I answer to that? And I started to find more information about this, and somehow I came across this neuro leadership journal online, where there was an article about how somebody had measured the brain activity of a person during that kind of situation where the person's social status was compromised or attacked. And since that is one topic of improv training and social status, and I got so interested about it. How can this be done? And could I be doing that also? Because that sounded to me like I could get a very solid ground for this theoretical understanding of what's happening in myself. So that led me to study first by myself for 2 years, maybe. I think we could read from internet and from local library and from neuroscience. And since I knew that it's fun, I can gain more knowledge and understanding like that, but it doesn't, it's not that useful for me as a teacher. And I knew that if I wanted to really explore this thing thoroughly, I should go to university and study more so I could be a better teacher and I could I could explain the theoretical part of improv also to the students. So I started doctoral studies and it was like 7 years ago, and here we are now. So it takes some time to combine theater-based improvisation and neuroscientific methods, but it can be done. And if I did it, so anyone can do it.
Thank you very much, Sirke. That was a very exciting journey of Oriental dance and learning. So very, very exciting. And of course, I have questions. One of the questions is this stage anxiety that you talked about. And you said that you've been dancing for over 30 years. Yes, so you were doing it on continuous basis. And the question that people might have, how is it possible that during all those years, people don't get used, or in general, through long periods of time coming to stage, people I still have that anxiety. Yes, how is that possible? Why people don't just adapt, or don't get used to constantly coming to stage and performing? What is the reason for that?
Well, I have some ideas, but that is such a big question, and if we knew the answer, I think we would have already found a clear solution to that. I must go back to our lizard brains, maybe. Let's talk about the human species first. I think that it's so important for humans to be accepted by other human beings. So we are not supposed to live alone. We're supposed to live together, and it's important that we fit to our community and get accepted. And if we do mistakes, for example, or anything that's not considered good for the community, and so then there is this possibility that you won't be accepted and you will be thrown away from the cave you have been living together safe with your people. I think that's so written really deep in our lizard brain that when you are performing, there is always the risk that you make mistakes, or even though you perform perfectly, so somebody doesn't like you somehow. And this is a really powerful effect of these eyes looking at you, even though if there is one person or just 2, 3, 4 persons looking at you, evaluating you. So this triggers your autonomic nervous system to this arousal mode, because now there is something important happening and you should perform well so that you will be accepted. Well, that's one reason why in theater world we have these roles and we have the safety of the role, because you can do much more freely express whatever you need to express in the theatrical play, for example, if that's only your role you are doing, you are like wearing a mask. People can't see yourself, who you are inside. They can see the role, and that's why you can do nearly anything, and you are not afraid of being cast out as much as if you don't have a role. And here I come to the dance and for example, Middle Eastern dance, but many other dances also where you actually don't need to take a role. You dance as yourself, and also as many singers and players, musicians, they don't actually adopt a role, but they play as themselves or sing as themselves. So it's like more dangerous to do that. So why doesn't it get better? Why don't you adapt to it? Well, it might also be that you don't always succeed. You have better days as a performer and you have worse days. And this, of course, keep that deep fear alive in you, that what happens next time. And you can never be sure that you succeed, that it's a risky business. So you can adapt, and some people do adapt, and they tell this. I'm always happy to hear these stories, how someone has been really suffered from severe stage fright, but then can manage, or I like to say that it doesn't go away like totally, but you can learn to live with it. Like some people say that it becomes your friend. It's like you don't even want to get rid of some of this arousal and excitement that you feel before the performance. It actually can boost you up. It gives you this energy which you need to perform well.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And maybe you can share some examples how people experience that stage anxiety. What happens during that time? How do people maybe describe it?
Oh, yes, truly. I think I know everything about that. Like your heart rate accelerates. You can hear the heart rate pounding in your ears, and your mouth dries, and your armpits get wet. So you sweat a lot, and your arms will sweat, and you find your respiration accelerating, and maybe you feel like you are going to faint soon, and you need to go to bathroom so much, and you might blush. And yes, it really feels that you are in great danger and that you are going to die soon.
Thank you for describing this and having all of those experiences, which, it feels like you said, like you're in danger that you might die soon. You still persevered. Yes, in spite of that, you went on the stage, you still danced. So, what motivated you to continue, or not just to say, okay, maybe this is not for me, maybe I will find something else to do?
There must have been, and there was, and there still is this passion for whatever art you are performing, dance or music or theater. So it feels so important that you can perform and you can express this. For me as a dancer, that you can express this beautiful music. It's also like that you feel this stage fright before the performance, but then it alleviates during the performance, and maybe it's 1 or 2 minutes in the beginning, and then the flow state comes, and you enjoy, and you feel like you are together with the audience and music and everything, like it really carries you, and you are a little bit off the ground or off the stage there when you dance. It's really when you are waiting in the curtains for your turn on the stage, you really curse yourself that I will never do this again. And then after the performance, you just tell yourself that remember that this is your home, this is where you belong, and for the next time, when is the next time you can do? It's absurd, really.
Yes, absolutely. So you mentioned passion, your passion for the things you do, and really possibility to show that embodiment or embodied version of music, that sensation, those emotions that you feel on the stage. Yes, so that really outweighed the anxiety that you had before that. So basically, it was like a trampoline for you to get this.
Yes, yeah, yes. Thank you for putting that in so short and concise format. That was exactly what I was trying to say.
Yeah,
Yes.
yes, thank you so much. Now, can you tell us, please, where does improvisation comes when you are performing? At what moment does it come? Where is it usually necessary? Because when I'm thinking of a dance, it's very clear pattern of movements that you need to perform. Where is even a place for improvisation on the stage? Yes, so can you tell our listeners more about that?
Okay, very interesting. Of course, there are choreographed performances and dances, and then there are improvisational performances. If you have practiced the choreography, so if it goes as planned, nothing much else happens there, like movement-wise, and even more important if you are dancing in a group, like performing a choreographed group dance. But if we're talking about solo, then you can decide that you are going to improvise on stage. Like you don't want to create a choreography. Maybe the music is familiar to you, but still you don't plan beforehand what to do, and you just trust the moment and the feeling at that moment, and that's why you can perform the same music again and again, and it always comes out differently. So yes, you pick these impulses from the music and also from the stage, from the place you are dancing, and from the audience, how they react and or not react, and everything affects to the performance when you improvise and you let it happen and you use all the impulses. Also, you trust yourself, like how it feels right now to express this part of the music. And then, even though you would be going to perform a choreographed dance, for example, so anything can happen on stage, and you don't remember everything, or something happens that you can't just follow the choreography, and you will need to improvise. For me, when there's something happening in the music, or the stage is so small or so big, and the choreography has been designed for some other kind of space, so you improvise. And of course, when you are performing with a live music with a band, so it's always something interesting happens, and it's better to improvise and not just cling to your ancient choreography. Maybe that clearly doesn't work at that moment. Yeah.
Yes, maybe you can remember one of your performances where you really improvised maybe the most out of all your other performances.
Oh, one occasion was when I was performing with a live band. It was a very common song. Everybody knew how it goes, when does it start, and especially when it stops. But then, like the band got so excited, they didn't stop playing. They just went on and the final part of the music, it was very fast tempo and really, and they read like the audience. They clearly found out that the audience was in it and clapping and enjoying, and so why to stop? No, and it was one moment that I remember. Okay, it feels like I've been dancing here like half an hour, but maybe not. And we just continue dancing as long as the music goes on.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And now my next question is, as you started diving into neuroscience, what did you discover about improvisation from the neuroscience point of view? What is it? What neural correlates does it have in humans? Maybe you can share what is it, improvisation from a neuroscience point of view?
Well, if I understand, did I understand right? What are the neural correlates of improvisation?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, that was actually my original idea of what I would be studying when I started these PhD studies. Well, I didn't get quite there because the methods I chose to use EEG, and that's not the one method to study those like spatial correlates of improvisation. But I would like to talk about creativity in the context of this question. So creativity has been studied a lot, and also improvisation in the context of creativity. There are studies that show that like this divergent thinking processes benefit from improvisation interventions. Another like a context is social interaction. I think that improvisation is almost the same as saying social interaction, because it's about interacting with something, and I'm talking here about between people. Maybe in performing arts, it's also interaction with the audience. It's also interaction with the music and the plays and so. But when we talk about theatrical improvisation, it's about communicating. So all the processes that are related to communication will affect to improvisation. So it's so wide an area. If you think about social interaction, it affects your brains like in so many levels in visual, auditory, and motor, and emotional, and all kinds of neural circuitries they activate. So how can I find something that is clearly related to improvisation, and how can I study this? So one thing I started to focus on is fiction and fictionality, because, well, now we go, it's very real when you improvise on stage, like dancing, but now I'm going more to the direction of theater improvisation and all the scenes, like when we are improvising on stage and with a group of people. So they are always fictional, these scenes. And you can adapt any roles. You can be a priest, or you can be a villain, or you can be a bank robber, or anything. So I was starting to study this kind of paradox of fiction. That's one central concept of my study. So that means ever felt scared for the main character in a film or a theater play, or in the book you are reading during the night, and you can't put aside your book because you need to know what happens to this main character. And also, if you have like I do, I always cry at every show, even if it was comedy or anything. I find myself crying in the end, and also to some commercials in the TV. So I react to them quite easily. And how could it be that you react so emotionally, even though you know that none of this is real? This is a play or a book or a commercial, and still you get the same feelings and emotions than if it was real. This is what we can create during the improvisational exercises, for example. And when we improvise, so maybe I could study that and compare that to real corresponding conditions. And then I might get some new information about what's happening during improvisation in these fictional scenes. So that's why I started to build this experimental design where I measured different biosignals of psychophysiological responses like heart rate and electrocortical activity, and also the facial muscle activity and skin conductance. Then how your palms sweat, for example, in a stressful situation. And then also these hormonal responses. I measured the amount of cortisol before and after some stressful conditions. So would there be seen any difference, and how much were they different in fictional condition and then in a real condition, or at least so real we could organize in laboratory conditions?
Mhm. Maybe you can give example of a fictional condition versus, the test or comparison condition, so that our listeners can more imagine your study.
Of course, yes, very good. For example, yes, our test conditions were like this real world condition was an interview where we had an interviewer. Well, he was an actor who was trained to reject these students that were interviewed. He was rejecting their answers by this kind of what we called in improvisation subtle social rejections, so that when he asks a question from the students about their real events, like how it was to study in Helsinki University. So they were talking about themselves and real feelings and experiences, what it was like to be a student. So then he would say, for example, yeah, that sounds interesting, but have you ever considered any of the possibilities or something like that? So he devalued them. So we got devaluation. This yes, but devaluation is the one of the subtle social rejections. Or he could answer a question and the student starts to answer, and then he would interrupt totally, but not letting them to speak their minds and go to the next question or whatever. And then there was a third condition or task when he would answer the question, and when the student starts answering, the interviewer starts to yawn or show signs of boredom, or take a sip of water, or look at the watch and when will they stop, and like act non-verbally, very impolitely. So this kind of this what was the real situation. The students didn't know, or half of the students didn't know that he would act like that. And actually, for the half of the group, we told them that he would act impolitely, but we didn't tell exactly how. So we wanted to also check this the division, if it had any effect. Well, so if that was the real condition, then the fictional condition was happened after that. So the students were with me, and we would do these exactly same exercises of devaluing and interrupting, and the nonverbal rejection, where I would say, and I said before the 2 minutes exercise, that now we are going to discuss, have a conversation, and I will always interrupt you, and I will show these nonverbal signs of rejection. But let's go on with this 2-minute exercise. So they knew beforehand what's going to happen. Like it's often is like this when you are practicing improv and doing these exercises. And all the time there were this physiological recording going on, and we got the biosignals recorded, and then we could compare afterwards these responses.
So, what were your findings? What did you find out as a possible answer to your initial question? How do we react to knowing that things are fictional? What was the difference that you found?
Well, we didn't find that much of a difference. So that was the finding, that we didn't find a clear difference in those many physiological signals that we were measuring. And that was kind of a surprising, because you would think that if you are told beforehand what's going to happen, so you wouldn't react that clearly or that much, because you process the information and you don't let yourself also. That is one perspective to that. But we also had some studies. We knew that during some this kind of a drama or improvisation has not been studied like this before, but maybe some other contexts there were quite similar physical brain and body responses to fictional or real conditions. So we were not entirely sure. We couldn't have a clear hypothesis on that, and that's why we wanted to study this. But anyway, none of these physiological measures showed clearly that our body would know if it's a real or fictional situation. Like if we think about how much your heart rate accelerates or decelerates during these situations, two different situations, and also if we think about this electrocortical index that we used this EEG alpha asymmetry index, which it's an index which shows the relative difference in frontal cortical activity. So and it's associated with withdrawal and approach motivation. So if we get positive values, then it might tell about that we are approaching to that situation. And if we get negative scores, it's more associated that we would like to withdraw from that condition we are in. This was quite expected, but never studied before in this kind of quite natural conversational situation, that these social rejections, all of them, like the fictional and real ones, we got these negative values. So they told us that the students were some kind of motivated to withdraw from this situation. It's quite natural, but nevertheless not known before. And also considering that these were quite subtle rejections, social rejections, like it happens in normal life all the time. You are being interrupted and someone doesn't listen to you with all that interest you would love to, or of course in our academic world it's our like a virtue to think like, yes, this is a good idea, but have you thought about this and this and this? That's like our job, and there's nothing wrong about it. But how it affects to our body in a certain level, so it always got this. We got these values that it told about withdrawal, motivation. So we got some new information and like a biological layer of information. What happens during this kind of conversation or social interaction, that, for example, to how to apply this information. So it would implicate that you can like simulate that kind of social interaction situations using improvisation and maybe more broadly also theater-based methods, that they do spar this kind of emotion that you would in a more realistic situation, which is important like learning-wise, because I'm a teacher, so I'm interested about learning and education, and how can you use that kind of teaching methods that produce learning and so that you remember these things that are important to you, and you kind of get this kind of memory traces that last long. So this might be one reason to use this kind of improvisational that you simulate social interaction situations where you act yourself and you get these learning experiences, and you might remember them well, because they give you these kind of emotional experiences that other previous research has shown that emotional experiences are remembered like better and longer than not so emotional experiences.
Yeah, that's a very interesting result. It is a result basically, first of all, that indicated or maybe again confirmed in a way that our brain doesn't distinguish between the virtual situation and the real situations, yes, which is a ground for us relieving emotions while we're watching movies, where it's fictional, yes, where we're reading and we still believe in that. I'm very curious about the reason for our brain not developing this type of distinguishing mechanism. What might be the reason for that? It means that that is something that is important for us in a way as species, not to have that distinction. Yes. So what do you think about that from evolutionary perspective? What can it mean?
Well, our brains do not develop as quickly as you would think about what our society and how our lives are nowadays. It's very common saying somehow, well, however it is in English, but it's like we are living in a modern world with our lizard brains still, so they haven't catched up to this moment. The main task of our brains is to keep us safe and living. And nevertheless, even though nowadays we don't have that kind of dangers, like we would be getting eaten by tigers or anything like that. So now maybe these places of danger are in the social communication, whether our ideas get accepted or not, and it replaces these more ancient evolutionary fears. So it's always better to be safe than sorry, if you want to put it like that. It's always better for us to think that this might have some negative consequences and how to protect from that. So it's better to produce this kind of also physical responses. And of course, now we, our cognition translates and interprets all the time and makes these predictions after a while how it would go. And this, even though, for example, if we are giving a presentation and we see all those so severe and blank faces in the audience, we have learned to know that it doesn't mean that they don't accept you or they don't like your presentation. It's maybe that they are just so concentrating on your presentation, so it doesn't mean anything harmful to you. But in a certain level, and we are talking here also about the very first reactions, like how our body first reacts, and then even though we know the cognitive processes, they might come just that much later, that our body has perceived and got this impression or representation of a potential threat, but then our brains, our cognitive processes process it later as a non-threatening situation. But anyway, it makes us like physically or computationally, if we are talking about the brains, it gives us extra work. And sometimes if you are like, you might notice that after talking to some person in your job or anywhere, so why do I feel so exhausted after that? And not with some other people's, even though the topic would be the same or something. So it might be that there is this kind of atmosphere of social devaluing a little bit, or you must struggle, even though the other person would not mean any harm, but there is that kind of interactional model working. So your body has been translating and computing these signals that it gets. It has to translate them all the time. So that might be one reason. This is speculation, but these results might give some indication to that direction.
Yes, so basically we are also creating those fictional stories about the person, although that might not have anything to do with the reality. And we have all these processes that are going on that would happen if the person really would be a threat, although he is not. And that's why we feel exhausted, we don't feel good. That is very, very interesting. I'm just very curious if we just brainstorm. Yes, I'm sure we don't have an answer for this, but if our brain wouldn't have this lack of separation between fiction and reality, yes, it would be able to separate it very clearly, how different would our world is. And I'm sure it's a speculation, but yes, just to think about it. What do you think?
Well, I like to brainstorm. It might be, well, good or bad. I think that if we always knew that this is just fiction, even though it resembles a factual world, I don't know if we wouldn't enjoy fiction. We wouldn't enjoy arts. Anything which is not the real. So if we would lack those emotional reactions, why would we do that? Because that wouldn't be like useful for us, and our bodies tend to do useful things, like not anything that is not useful. So that would be the downside of it. And what was I thinking about the good side of it? I don't know if it would give us more possibilities to imagine some things, because quite often we are afraid of, this improvisation and fictionality is so closely intertwined with imagination. Of course, if we want to create anything new, if we want to create arts or innovations, we must first imagine them like happening in a fictional environment. So what's taking us back or restricting us, that maybe sometimes we think, no, that can't be done, and no, it's too much, and it couldn't be implemented anyway, and so on. But maybe we wouldn't be restricted by this so much. I don't know. Well, that kind of thought. It would be anyway good if we didn't have that kind of restrictions. And sometimes it's possible, at least in an improvisational context, anything can happen. And actually, when you learn to trust the situation, it's true. Anything can happen in a fictional world.
Yes, yes. And maybe it would become easier in social interactions because we wouldn't be creating those difficult situations in our mind that don't exist. In examples that you provided, we wouldn't have all those bodily reactions to things that are not happening. Yes, from that perspective, it would be probably better for us, but at the cost of losing and a lot of creativity and imagination and ability to enjoy arts and create art. So it would be a huge cost probably to pay for that.
Thank you again. I was going to say that, but you got it. You got it perfectly. I always want to tell my ideas first to you, and then you will give them back to me in a in a precise format.
Yeah, so that's a power of a team, yes, of working together. Oh, wonderful. Yes. So you really went this very interesting, full of studies, full of learning road, yes, from your experience in dancing, then studies in drama, then doing your pedagogy studies and PhDs. It was a long road. What did you learn if you compare your beginning and your end? What did you learn about, first of all, stage anxiety as a part of social interaction? Yes. And second, what did you learn about improvisation? Because it's going through all your time of going on this path. So what would be your main findings that now you can say, yes, now I know it?
Somehow I feel that there are more questions now than there were in the beginning. Some questions that I didn't know need to be asked. And well, there will be a lot of more research to be done. But yes, I got some answers that, and not all the answers were expected. Like I guess that some of my results were first disappointing because they didn't confirm the hypothesis. But then when I started to think again, and why didn't this confirm the hypothesis and our expectations? So then I really saw like improvisation in a whole new perspective, and myself learned more than if I just would have completed all the tests, and the results would have been what I thought they would be. One that we have not been talking about yet is this heterogeneous treatment effect we found. And that has a lot to do with social interaction and improvisation, and who would benefit from improvisation training. So, and we didn't try to find it, but we found that those participants who got low grades interpersonal confidence that we were measuring using a questionnaire, those who were least confident in the beginning, they gained the most benefit from improvisation training. It was a bit surprising because maybe people might think that if you want to go to an improvisation class or workshop or whatever, so you would need to be already quite extrovert and maybe brave and talkative or something like that, so that you can manage that and work there. But no, that was not what we found. We found exactly the opposite, that when you really might have a social anxiety or you're not so confident, so that's when you might benefit from improv classes. And you don't have to even train that long a period. We had a 5-week intervention and a 7-week intervention and a 10-week intervention. It's not that long, and you could already see these effects and this impact on your interpersonal confidence. So I don't want to say that those who were already confident so that they didn't get any benefit from improv intervention. I think they learned because these were student teachers, so they learned a lot of ways to create a positive learning environment and a lot of ways how to be sensitive and develop their reciprocity when teaching and when working with the students. But in this interpersonal confidence, they didn't advance that much than these who were originally more like shy or not so confident. So I became really delighted and I was happy about that because, that tells us that this confidence thing is not like you are that kind of person or that kind of person and there's nothing you can do about it. You can do about it and you can train it. Also this, I don't want to say ability, but this kind of part of yourself. And also the training part can be so much fun, during the improv courses. That's one thing that's worth mentioning.
Thank you so much. And what, in your opinion, was the biggest contribution of neuroscience, neurophysiology, this type of research in your expanded view on improvisation and, stress, anxiety, creativity, everything that you were studying? What value did it add to what you were trying to understand and study?
I think it gave a really important and missing part of information on this research on improvisation. And it has to do with this, what we could, some people say that it is hard data, neuroscientific data. It's solid information. It's like hard and accurate and like versus qualitative data. When I think about, for example, a person who suffers from a severe stage fright or so, then and if I think about myself back then, I would have wanted to know that if I choose to go to improv lessons, for example, which I really didn't want to do at that time in the first place, so that it's really effective. So in that way that it can be measured by that kind of methods, that they don't tell about for example, this kind of social desirability, which is sometimes when you are doing interview studies or even study some topic with a questionnaire, so the participants might want to answer so that it's so socially acceptable, or so that the interviewer would like you to answer. So it's not a choice, this answer of yours. It's not a choice. We are measuring with the neuroscientific methods, we are measuring that kind of responses that are not voluntary, and they are so quick that you don't even perceive them. You are not conscious about them. So we get that kind of information, which then can complement this other kind of information we can get from questionnaires and interviews and so on. Also, if we would ask like students or participants of improv lessons, how do you feel and how did you experience this or that? Maybe there are no words for those experiences you are feeling, or maybe like I do, I don't know the right expressions at that time when you are asked about that, but then when I go home, I know that, oh, I should have told that, and so you can't describe all your emotions and experiences in a very clear and specific way. But with the neuroscientific methods, we can get information of your arousal state and maybe about the valence of your experiences, and during exactly that moment. Also, if we would ask after some intervention, we would ask this and that, and how did you feel then, and how do you feel now? You don't remember that experience anymore, but we have all the data saved for each millisecond when we use this neuroscientific data. So it's very useful and important for various kind of people who are thinking that should I or should I not indulge myself to this maybe threatening idea of going to some kind of improvisational workshop or course. When I worked as a drama teacher, an own company, or we had a cooperation. We had a firm together with two other drama teachers. We educated and gave workshops in business life to various professions, but also for some people who were in leading positions, and so in a firm. I found out that it was quite difficult at first for them to abandon their roles and engage in our exercises and start improvising. So I thought, what would be the way to make them participate and for them to feel more at ease? I kind of sympathized for them. I wanted to help them. Then I thought that maybe they need that kind of information, which is really like this hard data that you can measure, that there is an input and output, and it's worth participating and trying and taking the risk. So there are many reasons why this kind of information, like a biological, empirical data, might work for people who need information.
Yes, absolutely. And it's very interesting that you mentioned administration leaders. So how they can benefit from improvisation classes, improvisation activities?
Well, we come back to the context of social interaction or the workplace atmosphere, for example. I kind of say that improvisation equals to listening with your whole body. It's kind of whole body listening. You don't only listen to what people say, but how they are. You learn to perceive the whole. You might sometimes it was use this body language. You might learn to listen to body language and verbal language. So it helps you to be more sensitive what's happening, like who is talking, who is listening, who reacts, and how, and to be more reciprocal also. Like it's not that you are just seeing things more and getting more impulses, understanding like this human interaction better, but you also get some tools how to react and give back in a very constructive way. That is very important everywhere whenever two persons meet or a group meets. So these soft skills are very important.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with soft skills because I consult people on careers, and very often we do preparation for interviews, mock interviews, and this is one of the requirements, very important requirements to have well-developed soft skills. Employers are usually testing on soft skills people who are applying for jobs. So even in this application is so wonderful, and we can refer people now to attend improvisation training. Improvisation workshop is one of the possibilities to elevate their soft skills as well.
Exactly, yes. So now that when I hear you talking about that, I understand that what I've been doing, that I have been studying soft skills with hard methods.
Yeah, I like how you said that soft skills with hard methods. Yeah. And one more thing I remembered when you talked about the studies that you conducted with measuring various physiological parameters. I just yesterday recorded a podcast with Frederick Simard from Canada, from Montreal, and he created a system specifically to measure all the emotions people have in natural setting. So it's completely mobile system, and he actually creates these events where they provide those systems for about to 6 people, and the people can experience things. It might be exhibit, art exhibit, it might be a performance, might be a park when everything is tranquil and very calm, and they're recording all that data to then analyze and to see what people experience in natural settings when they're exposed to all those various arts and nature and different settings. So I think that's amazing, and maybe this can be some type of extension of what you do. So bringing the research from the lab to real stage, to real classroom, or whenever this you think that might be helpful.
Yes, that is very impressive and very exciting, and to pursue these ecological environments to measure our physiological data. I can see the future like going towards that direction, because we might get really different results if you are being measured in the lab or in the more natural environment. I already used mobile equipment here in my study, but we were still sitting in a lab, and not, we were not outside or going there. But yes, I look forward to that very much, and developing to that direction.
Speaking about direction and the future, what do you think is a place for technology, neurotechnology in performing arts in the future?
Oh, there are no limits to that. And when artists and neuroscientists put their imagination together, so what can't be achieved? I think it can offer us new representations of reality and what's happening inside of us. And we can understand ourselves better. It has a lot to offer, maybe because there are so many kinds of arts, and so I can't now picture any one image or way to apply these two fields.
If we focus, let's say, on drama, there are various technologies like brain-computer interfaces that can actually record the activity and showcase it maybe to other people. What do you think would be a future if we add a part of neurotechnology or technologies to this?
Well, drama is about action. It's about doing things, and maybe we might find some new understanding on other people's feelings and experiences in a more concrete way, that we can, like, for example, exchange our physical responses. It can't be seen, for example, when I measured the activity of facial muscles. So I got some results, even though the faces were not expressing any emotion at all. And that's what we see when we are discussing, for example, with other people. So what we see is not the same as what happens there. This minimal activation of that can tell you about the situation, if it's, for example, positive or negative or stressful or so maybe we can find our understanding on encounters during encounters. And this brings me back to my original very first academic interest. I was studying the cultures in the comparative religions, which is a cross-cultural study. And I was interested in how cultures interact and what kind of conflicts are there between the cultures. And now I'm here measuring the biosignals of a single person, but during this interaction. And still, I think that I am doing the same thing still than like 30 years ago, because I think that also cultures interact and encounter via individuals. So it's like bodies interact, and if you are from different cultures, so there's still your bodies that interact. And if we can understand like better, like where we do understand each other and when not so much. And for example, there are studies on interpersonal synchrony and how to develop that and how it emerges. So these are the one of the possibilities that neurotechnology can provide understanding.
Yes, definitely. Thank you for this glimpse into a possible future. And what is your future plans? What is your next step?
There are many directions. One that I am right now interested in is to study the older adults or people who have already past their working career, like people maybe over 65, because I found there are not so much research done in this age group, because of course most of the studies are made with people like from their 20s to 40s or maybe 50s, and then there are studies made with children, but not so much when it comes to people who are retired, like older adults. And now, actually, right now, having a pilot group of older adults, I'm giving them improvisation workshop, and I want to know if it's different for them or not, how to teach, if are there any differences, how to teach improvisation to older adults or not, and how they experience it. And hopefully I am now, of course, trying to get funding for that I can measure also these effects and impacts with psychophysiological methods. And it would be really interesting to find a way to measure like brain plasticity following improvisation training. And that would be another layer of biological information on the impact and possible benefits of improvisation training.
Yes, absolutely. And of course, I wish you all possible success with these new steps. And maybe you will be able to provide updates, at some point to our listeners. What did you find in this new study as well? So, for those who are listening to us, joining from performing arts, what would be your recommendations if they want to explore these new possibilities by adding neurotechnologies, neuroscience to their work, to find new layers of what they do? What would be your suggestions, your advice?
Well, I would say that you are very welcome to this field. Please do it. It would be groundbreaking and new information, and it would be much needed because the information and knowledge is built by so small pieces. What I have done, it's so small piece of a puzzle, and we need more pieces and how to build this understanding. And of course, you need this basic knowledge of brain functions and brain and bodily functions, and well, even more, you need to have a group of people on this that can help you from this interdisciplinary group. So it's often like artists. They understand themselves. There's a bubble of artists, and then there is another bubble of scientists, and they don't interact so much. But just creating these interactions and making initiatives, and I would just say that if you have any interest on this, so then ask anybody and ask for cooperation. And actually, there are Finland in the University of Helsinki. There is a rich scene of studying music with neuroscientific methods, for example, of also other fields, but it's not that far. And maybe I also thought that now I'm doing something that nobody has done before, and this will be exciting. But of course, when you start to dig in, so you will find that someone has done this before, and it helps you, and you can build on that. And I hope that someone really will build on my basic experiments and make better ones, and correct what I have done wrong, and go on from that. Yes.
Yes, absolutely. And speaking about the music research at the University of Helsinki, there is a lot that was done at Cognitive Brain Research Unit, and we had one of our podcast guests, Dr. Elvira Brattiko, talking about that. So I think she was really very important in developing all this field, and we can refer our listeners also to listen to that podcast to get familiar. And of course, then there are many important articles and information on Cognitive Brain Research Unit website that we can refer people to at the University of Helsinki. So, wonderful. Thank you very much for all this advice. If people want to contact you and discover more about the things you do, what would be the best way to reach out to you? And also, maybe you can refer to some web pages, some information where they can learn more about your research work.
Yes, it would be wonderful to contact people who are interested in this field. I can be found in LinkedIn by my name, and you're welcome to message me through that, social media, and of course you can email me. My email for the moment is in Helsinki, sirke.seppänen@helsinki.fi. I can give this in writing later. And I'm not sure about how long that email will be, because I have now leaving the University of Helsinki soon. So my Gmail is also a good address after that. So it will be sirke.seppänen@gmail.com. I would welcome any questions or messages through email or LinkedIn. I think this is these two ways for now. And yes, all my research is online. So thank you for the free science we are doing, the University of Helsinki.
Yeah, thank you so much. And we will add all that information into our podcast notes. So all this will be available for our listeners. Thank you. And as we are wrapping up our podcast, would you like to share anything else with our listeners? Any advice? Anything that you would like to end our podcast with?
I just want to say that if you are in drama, into improvisation, you already know that nothing is impossible. So you just do it.
Okay. Very good. Very good. Thank you very much, Sirke. It was a great pleasure to have you on our podcast, and I wish you all possible success and in your future studies, in your work. I'm sure that your studies will continue. You have a very inquisitive spirit, so I'm very much looking forward to learning about your new steps on your path. So thank you.
Thank you so much to you, Milena. I really appreciate it, this possibility to be a guest in your podcast.
Dear Neurocareers podcast listeners, thank you for joining us on this incredible journey into the entrepreneurial world of neuroscience and neurotechnologies. I hope you've been inspired by the stories of those who are turning groundbreaking ideas into impactful realities. If you are looking for more guidance on succeeding in neurocareers, book a free consultation with me, your podcast host, Dr. K, at the Institute of Neuroapproaches. So, what are you waiting for? Let's navigate the path to success in the world of neurocareers and make the impossible possible together.